Hello there, and welcome to the Cargo Bay, a Star Wars conversation podcast being transmitted to you from a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I am Brady C here with my co-host, as always.
Adam B. How's it going, BC?
It's going good, Adam B. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing so dandy, BC. I'm sitting here surrounded by my Star Wars card collection. I got all sorts of shiny cards, graded cards, not graded cards,
Oh,
protected cards, trash cards.
oh my
I
God!
got it
It's
all.
it's a it's a wonderful dragon's hoard that you're sitting on over there.
Yes, yes. Because today, BC, we're going to be talking about Star Wars trading cards, the hobby in general.
I
How,
love it.
how does one get started? That's a question I see often in various Facebook groups across Zuckerberg's magical land, and
Yeah,
probably forum posts as well out there. Surely some people are interested.
I would hope so.
We've been collecting Star Wars cards for how long now, VC?
A couple, ooh, over 2 years at this point, I'd say.
Yeah, when we
Since the early pandemic,
yeah, so we're late
mid
to the
pandemic.
game, but we're no longer newbies, I'd say.
Yeah, I think we went through our newbie phase and have become well versed in various aspects of this hobby, which is fairly vast if you look at the totality of what Star Wars has to offer in terms of trading cards.
There's a lot of cards getting printed. And if you're out there right now, you're listening to the podcast, that's great. We're going to try to keep this audio only friendly. But also, this is a good one to watch on the YouTube because we're going to be showing examples of cards and things.
Yeah,
Something else
little show and tell.
yeah, I got to show off some of these shiny
That's
things over
right.
here.
That's right.
And also, just want to point out that this is, our opinions. People get really heated about various aspects of this hobby, so I'm sure we'll
It's
get yelled at. Leave your opinion in the comments, and other people can look at it and weigh yours versus ours. How about
Wait, hold
that?
on. Are you telling me that there are opinionated Star Wars fans out there?
Look, I know it's hard to believe that
Ooh.
Star Wars fans would get upset about things, be particular about things, but it can happen. So
Okay.
let's all just be a big happy family for the moment and be glad that we're all enjoying little pieces of paper with Star Wars characters printed on them.
Yeah, I think that's a good disclaimer for this particular conversation.
Beautiful. Well, let's dive right into it, BC.
Let's do that, and let's just say I actually want to do this in terms of card collecting. Does this go back to your childhood pre-Star Wars? Were there sports cards collected in your youth?
Yeah, I definitely started with football cards at some point. Had a
Hmm.
smattering of other sports cards.
Yeah.
I've still got a Shaquille O'Neal that's worth like $40 or something. How about that?
Oh
That's pretty good from
yeah.
my childhood. But really,
Solid.
Pokemon and Magic the Gathering. Those were the cards that got to me the most as a boy. Although I did have some Star Wars trading card game cards as well.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Yeah, kind of same for me. I mean, sports cards in my youth, this was of course when, you know, 90s is kind of the height of just cards being printed to the moon. Which was quite the time to be alive, which ultimately kind of crashed the card market for a little while there, but it's come back and
We're
it's a
in
bubble that's
another bubble, baby.
a bubble that's never going to burst. But yeah, so I definitely had some familiarity with like trading cards and that kind of stuff. But getting back into it whenever we did a couple years ago was kind of like being reintroduced to a whole new like landscape as far as I was concerned in terms of card collecting. You know, the very different landscape of what we were looking at whenever we got back into cards.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about the different kinds of products available on the market today to the modern collector. So, BC, basically, we have three ranges of card prices. I would say we got our low range, usually paper cards that are going to
Mm,
retail, and then
yep.
we have mid range hobby boxes that are aimed at adults with expendable income, mostly
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
specialty order or from Topps Direct or something like that. And then
Yeah.
finally, we have the ultra high end, product that you and I have never touched and probably never will.
Yes, yeah, there's something for every budget,
Yeah. Well,
including the ones that are untouchable for most.
yeah. If you're willing to buy old cards that nobody wants, there might be something for every budget. But I'd say like trying to get out of a store with some Star Wars cards, you're gonna be spending at least like $20
Yep.
on that.
So just in basic terms, so for card collecting, there's a few different ways of doing it, right? So there's just going to a store, buying a box of something to rip some packs. This is, by the way, my favorite version of card collecting because I love ripping a pack or two. That's a personal preference of mine. So anytime I can find something on the shelf, I'll I'll usually buy it if you can find it in retail. These are going to be your blaster boxes, is what they're commonly referred to as. I've got an example here for my YouTube audience. For those of you who are listening on a podcast, it's a small box,
Yeah,
the small box of cards.
you can hold it in one
Um,
hand.
yeah, this is Book of Boba Fett season one. Everyone, probably the hottest show in the history of Star Wars. But they released a set of this, both in a hobby and a retail SKU. But for the money, I would just say you might as well get a blaster box, because the only thing you're guaranteed in the hobby is going to be an autograph, which is going to be one of the big differences between retail and hobby, is the guaranteed hit. You want
Right.
to talk about
So
hits for a second?
yeah. So just to be clear, a blaster box has how many packs in it?
I
Between
mean,
6 and 10
between 6 and 10
I'd
is going
say.
to be pretty standard. Yeah.
And then a hobby box has maybe double that on average,
Yeah.
and also the odds are different. So a pack
Yes.
of cards you get out of a blaster box might have lower odds at getting an autograph or a hit than
Yes.
a hobby box pack does. So
Yes.
yeah, maybe we should talk about what kinds of hits there are.
Oh, so many types of hits. You've got your autographs, you've got your sketches, you've got your numbered parallels. Um, yeah, these are the chases. This is where you're getting your retirement from here, people, for that beta trawler autograph that you're likely going to find. The hits are going to, vary in a lot of ways, but hobby is a guaranteed of a hit of some kind. There's big chases in those, in terms of high-end autographs that are very scarce to fairly common autographs that you can buy for $3 wherever you'd like. So for me, depending on the set, like if it's like for Book of Boba Fett, right? I'm gonna pick up these blasters because they're $20. I think the hobby boxes that came out at like 80 or
150 or
100,
something.
and
Yeah.
and they're down to like $55. But for those specifically, so it's similar to the Mandalorian season 1, season 2, Book of Boba Fett. So the Disney Plus shows hobby boxes, they don't have high pack counts, but they've got a guaranteed hit. So they come in a fancy 10 case, which doesn't really mean anything, and it's like 7 or 8 packs, I feel
Yeah, it's
like,
a
in
low
those hobby
number of
boxes.
packs in those
It's a
specific hobby
it is a
boxes.
low number of packs in those specific hobby boxes, but it is a guaranteed hit, as opposed to the blaster boxes, which is just paper based cards, which is the majority of what you're going to get in those hobby boxes too. So that's going to be one sort of differentiating thing, is like there's products that are going to be hobby and retail. Then there's going to be hobby only products, which you will not find at Walmart or Target. Think of your Chrome style cards, the fancier, I guess we would say, middle tier of kind of cards.
Yeah.
Those you will not find at a retail store. You're gonna have to buy those online or through Topps or one of the big three retailers, which is Blowout Cards, David Adams Card World, and Steel City Collectibles.
Nice. Or if
So
you're lucky and have a local card store, that'll
yes,
order some for you.
yes,
Um, yeah, and most of these, so these hits, these autographs, most of these in Star Wars products, especially in the low to mid range, they're going to be sticker autos, which means, the celebrity or the actor has, or whoever is signing the card has signed many, many stickers, and then those stickers have been stored by Topps and applied to cards after the fact. I like sticker autos just fine. I think they look cool. They got a little shiny, reflective sticker of authentication, behind it. But obviously, less desirable to high end collectors than on card autographs, usually, which those you're going to find in, more expensive products, kind of the upper tier products, or Topps also has products that are one card packs, baby. You get one encased card per pack
We
at
we
a
were
high
talking
price.
we were talking signature series here.
Yeah, I'm talking signature series. So if you bought from the 2021 signature series, you might get an autograph for $70 of Imperial Security Officer,
Mm-hmm.
or you might get one of Steve Bloom for
Solid.
Zeb Aurelius. That'd be pretty cool. Or you might get something which I do not have, which is a very valuable autograph of a big star like Harrison Ford.
Yeah, that's the hope. And that product specifically, just as it's about to come out, the 2023 version, I guess, of Signature Series. I always say buyer beware, but that feels like a product that you're most likely ripping as a case as opposed to like just a box. It feels like, because the box is a complete and total gamble for me at $75 for a box, because it's very possible that you will pull a $5 to $10 card out of that $75 box.
This is a good point, BC. So not only are there different price ranges of cards, there are people like you and I, BC, who if we get one box from a set or two, that's like,
Yeah,
wow, we got a lot of cards.
yeah,
We got a couple of hobby boxes. There are also, collectors who will buy an entire case of product because generally there's a box hit, right? You're going to get
hmm,
one autograph in your box. There's also
yeah,
typically a case hit, which means there's one really good knockout card in that case of cards somewhere, probably.
yes, yep.
So a lot of people do that, completely unfamiliar with it. But that just goes to
Yeah.
say you might get two boxes and have complete trash, quote unquote, or just not
Yep.
get your value back in the least. You should never expect to get your value back, but you'll really not get it back sometimes, where you'll buy like $150 box and get cards that amount to $40 worth of, if you were to sell them really hard, or $40 in trade value.
Yeah. And I think that's a pretty good sort of like breakdown of what to expect from like high end collecting, from hobby to like low end retail, right? I think what I just, as I can transition to something here, is that another thing that I think of just in terms of like where to start for collectors is like, my biggest piece of advice is collect what you like, right? This is going to be a huge thing, because at first we were wandering blind in the desert. We didn't know what was out there, just getting our hands on what we could get our hands on. I think the more informed you can be about a product, the better. So, look up all the, images of what the product's borders are going to look like, what the product itself is going to look like, because it'll give you a pretty good idea of like if it's something aesthetically that you like, or if it's an era of Star Wars that you like. I mean, my initial collection was like, I'm very much into the animated stuff, so I went into like looking for Clone Wars stuff and Rebel stuff. There's every sort of era of Star Wars that can be out there. So there's sort of niche different ways that you can collect too, whether it's building sets, which is definitely a type of collecting where it's like, I want to get the entire base set of 100 or 300 cards in some cases for whatever set, and collecting entire sets. Or if it's like collecting a character, or if it's collecting autographs or parallels. There's just so many different ways that you can do it, but be informed about what is going to be in a product so you know what you're looking for, especially if you're doing it to like doing it for the rip to open something. Like, don't buy something expecting a Harrison Ford autograph, one, ever, but two, if his name isn't on the checklist. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
Know what's going to be in there, and what it is that you might be chasing if you're collecting as a ripper, versus if you're just going on and buying singles, which is another thing that I'm sure we will talk about.
And if I can just say, one of the things you should be looking for to find joy in, at least from my perspective right now, and you can definitely have a cynical take on this, but we are living in the era of numbered parallels, which means
Yeah,
that, you'll have a base set of cards that look a certain way, and a lot of times there will be a parallel version or multiple parallel versions of every card in the set. So, for example, you'll have a base card that will just look plain, and then maybe the parallel of that has a red border or a green border. And depending on which color border it is, it'll be more rare than another one. And generally, at some point, these numbered parallels, they get to a certain rarity where they are numbered individually. And so, for example, a very common thing is saying, hey, I want to collect an entire set of this set in an orange border, or I want to, collect all the of 25s of this set, whatever that may be. That's my favorite thing in Star Wars collecting. I'm a big fan of low numbered Star Wars cards. It's false meaning. But
right.
for the 2021 Chrome Galaxy, and the Chrome Galaxy cards they have different kinds of reflective parallels in the background. So you have different kind of foils on those cards, which I think that really got my attention because I grew up on Pokemon.
Yeah, I grew up on Pokemon. Yeah, I don't know. It is a vast and expansive amount of styles of collecting that can be done. So to me, it's like one, know what you're getting into, and then just like have a good idea of what you like. Because for me, like I like a lot of different things. I do like parallels. I landed specifically on green parallels. Just so happened that the first box of Star Wars cards that I ever opened, I think the first pack that I ever opened, had a green parallel from the Skywalker saga of Han Solo. And I was like, this is the coolest card ever. It's a $5 card at most. It's it numbered out of 99. It's a paper product, but it's got a green border. It looked different than the other cards. And I just liked it. I mean, aesthetically, like I like green. It's one of my favorite colors, but seeing a green border on cards, I'm just like, usually if there's a green border and it's a character I like, I'm going to try to chase it down to some degree if it's within a reasonable price. I also like collecting autographs of characters that I like, especially ones that tend not to be as expensive as the original trilogy actors. Again, that's a budget thing. Like, if I could, I would have a set of, Carrie and Harrison and Mark on the shelf, but those are a little out of my price range at this point. So I mean, I was able to affordably get a lot of the Rebels characters, basically for, on average $25 to $30 a card, maybe.
Yeah, there's definitely plenty of affordable autographs out there. You'll come to recognize some signers as having many cards in almost every set. Topps definitely leans on certain actors, usually in small roles, to fill out their hobby boxes. This might be a good time to talk about some of the kind of where the values are floating on some of the highest end Star Wars cards right now, which basically, if you're looking at a Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, or Mark Hamill, I'd say you're looking north of $3,000 in almost every case, almost up to $10,000, depending on if the card is a 1 of 1, if it's a 5 of 5, if it's, how low the parallel is and what shape it's in and all that kind of jazz. But
yeah, prices on those have fluctuated
and will continue to as more stickers come out, as more.
Well, and the big news from this year's industry conference is Mark Hamill is signing again. What does that do to his previous autograph prices now that there's going to be more, because he just stopped signing autographs for Topps for a while? Carrie Fisher is, of course, no longer signing autographs. Rest in peace. And Harrison Ford, he's got some stickers out there, and I'm sure they get him into a room once a year and write him a check for a certain amount of money, and he's just totally cool with that. But yeah, I mean, $1,500 on the lowest end, which is like to get in on one of those. But yes, up to 5, 10, depending on the card. Another thing you bring up too, which as a blanket statement for everything we're going to say, the condition of the cards means almost everything in terms of value. Think about eye appeal would be my biggest thing. Are the corners sharp? Is the surface clean? Are the edges nice? Is the image centered? Because this is not always going to be the case with cards. You're bringing up in terms of value. I want to talk specifically vintage value, which when we're talking vintage, we're going to the OG Blue Starfield as the king of Star Wars vintage.
Yeah.
This is Star Wars before it was A New Hope, before it was Episode 4. There was top Star Wars trading cards, and they had a beautiful blue Starfield border.
I have now this is not these are not original, but the blue Starfield has been recently reprinted.
It is I mean I think it's an iconic card border like
across
period across all card collecting. Yeah,
looks something like that, vaguely like this.
It is objectively very cool and how it looks. Now the thing about these cards is they're old, and a lot of them are not in great condition.
They were
and
never
a lot
cut
of them
straight in the first place, which is a problem with Topps.
Not very well centered. So the value in these cards is finding them in really good condition, because if you can find well centered original cards from the first movie, then you're looking at some real value. I mean, in terms of like graded cards from that original set, hundreds of dollars is pretty standard for just like a common card. Like this is before the era of parallels and autographs and all of that. These are just bubblegum baseball cards, essentially, if you want to think about it that way. But because of their age, because of their condition, that's where all the value is going to be derived from. Because if you can find a Luke Skywalker #1 in really good condition, you're sitting on a good amount of money.
And speaking of condition, BC, there are obviously companies out there who will take your money to tell you what kind of condition your card is in. Word of advice to anyone who's thinking about grading cards. First of all, get yourself a centering guide and do a bit of research, and don't send in cards that aren't going to grade well. I've seen a lot of people get into collecting to maybe try to make a buck, buy up lots of cards and send them off to be graded, and a lot of them come back in a case that isn't going to sell any higher because it's not graded highly. It's an 8.5 or whatever. Nobody cares. The main players in the grading scene, at least the old standards at this point, are we have Beckett. Beckett has clear cases. They give subgrades, which means they'll tell you that, like, this card, for instance, is a 9. It's graded a 9 on centering, a 9 on edges, a 9 on corners, and a 9.5 on surface. And for Beckett, that's a 9. SGC is my favorite for my personal collection because they're pretty affordable by comparison. They move pretty quickly. Easier to get a 10 in an SGC probably than in a PSA. PSA being king in Star Wars cards right now, and kind of just cards in general.
In general, yeah.
PSA, like this is a 10 in a PSA is going to be worth more probably than a 10 in an SGC, just because people trust PSA to be a little more strict.
Quick PSA about PSA. That's public service announcement. A public service announcement is going to be that yes, they hold the highest value. I mean, that's true across Star Wars, sports in general. I mean, that they are sort of the king in terms of value. However, if you're doing it, there's a couple different things, right? If you're doing it for money purposes, to like resell your cards, you will get more bang for your buck. You're also going to be waiting longer if you submit your PSA for grading. SGC is cheaper to grade, and their turnaround is like 10 days or less at this point. I mean, they're getting cards back to people very quickly, but again, you're not going to get as much for your SGC 10 as you are your PSA 10. But if you're just looking to move a card quickly to get 80% of what a PSA 10 would do, then SGC is a really good option. I also like both of them for my personal collection, right? I like the look of SGCs for certain cards. I like the PSA on my sports cards.
Ooh, if you get a PSA on a red parallel, that can look really nice because they have a red border on the PSA label.
this is one of my prized possessions. This is probably a $2 card at most, $2. But I have the only copy of an SGC-10 that exists on the planet currently. So
That's
everyone
right.
else, rush to get your Captain America.
Population 1
Yeah,
SGC 10.
up the 2011 Upper Deck Captain America comic book cover #1 insert card. Um, I mean, I think it looks really good in the SGC, slab.
Yeah, the SGC slab has black plastic around the card, so a different look than the typically clear plastic of most grading companies. And there are other grading companies out there. Some will do custom labels. There's all kind of options. For me, I just want a few special cards, basically sealed up in a way that I can hand them to my friends and be like, "Look at this," and not worry that they're going to damage it because they don't understand that
Here's
it's
a very
important to
valuable
me.
card.
Yeah,
Please
yeah.
don't destroy this. Yeah.
It just finally puts me at ease handling cards. To have them slabbed is my favorite thing about it in general. It's just
Yeah.
like, oh, this is safe-ish now.
Yeah. Which is why, I mean, if you have those 77s in a even in SGC 7s or 8s, those are relatively high grades. PSA 8s, 9s, I mean 10s are not unheard of, but they are very rare just
Yeah,
based off of quality and condition of the card. So there's a lot of value in that. I would warn, I guess, or just sort of say, the value of those original vintage cards is going to go down as the trilogy goes on. So from Empire to Return of the Jedi, there's a lot of Return of the Jedi cards that you can still go out and get right now in
yeah,
sealed packs. I mean, you can get a sealed pack of Return of the Jedi cards for, I don't know, $10 probably. If you wanted to get an original 1977 Star Wars pack of cards, like $100 probably, upwards of that for the original blue cards, and that's just like prospecting on the hope that you've got a well-centered card in there, which
yeah,
is again very unlikely.
yeah.
So I mean, there's value even just having packs of these things that are unopened, which
Yeah,
is
they're
another
you can grade
another
the
way of
packs.
collecting.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I love the art on the original packs. I think there
yeah,
is something
super
very
cool.
displayable and collectible about those too. Yeah.
Yeah, the that OG Star Wars set is about as good as Star Wars collecting gets, from that perspective until you get to the numbered products. We've got a vast wasteland of time between the original Star Wars cards and basically up until numbered parallels, and even I think more recently, where most of the stuff printed in that era is very cheap. Or
Yeah.
cheap enough to get, and that's where we started collecting because you and I found, hey, you can still buy a full box of Topps Star Wars 1997 vehicles for like,
Yeah. Yeah.
$60 or whatever. There are some exceptions. There was a chrome back Star Wars Finest series that had some gold refractors, which were just a rarer parallel. Those can get pretty pricey. But generally, looking at 90s Star Wars cards is a great place to be. And also where Star Wars Galaxy started, which is probably collectively our favorite Star Wars product.
Yeah, I think, because I mean, just to segue into that too, because we talked about value in terms of the vintage stuff. There's value in a lot of this modern stuff with the parallels and the quality
And again,
finishes
we
and the
put
autographs.
quotation marks around value.
Value,
We are in a
yeah,
bubble, and who knows if
yeah.
these cards will or won't be worth anything
I
in
mean,
20
I
years.
I still think these hobby boxes are wildly overpriced for what
Yeah.
you're getting, but like it's just where they are right now. In terms of what I would personally say is of value to me is whenever we did find the Star Wars Galaxy cards, because a little bit of show history for you listeners and viewers. We started off on Twitch, one just talking about Star Wars randomly one day, and then I happened upon a box of these Skywalker Saga blaster box. Like, hey, well, why don't we open some of these and talk about cards and talk about Star Wars? And it really kind of ignited like a love of like going back to collecting cards and being like, oh, there's so many Star Wars cards out there. So you and I, we started like buying up different like packs and stuff, just like loose packs that we
Yeah.
found on
Yeah.
eBay to open, just like weird Star Wars stuff, non-sport trading cards. Just, I mean, truly a wildly random assortment of
Like
junk
we
wax
would
era
buy
cards.
big lots of like 100
Lots, yeah,
random packs of
yeah, of junk. you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
but to open for, the purpose of like content and talk about like, oh, we can talk about the Robin Hood Prince of Thieves
Little
movie and
time
open some
capsule.
packs.
I
Yeah,
opened
exactly.
a pack of Nightmare Before Christmas cards off of some dusty shelf. Had a Jack Skellington on card autograph in there. How about that?
One of
It's
the coolest
wild.
pulls of all time,
Yeah.
legitimately. It is a fantastic. Like who knew that there were autographs in loose packs of those just around? But like through that, we like stumbled upon these Star Wars Galaxy cards, which are fantastic. This is where, so after the trilogies stop, Return of the Jedi in '83, basically there's no Star Wars cards for about 10 years, right? So I think it's around 93 or something that the Galaxy
Yeah.
series starts. And this is a set it's it's conceptual in a way too, where there's like an introductory card which is like introduces you to like the title card in Star Wars that's got the opening crawl on there. They're like, here's the Galaxy set with, I think it's 140 cards or something like that. But they're all art cards, so they're very, very designed. The backs on them have cool pieces of art, and there's a lot of information about the artist, about the artwork that's featured. That is, for me as a collector, very interesting because it
Yeah.
appeals not only to my nature of collecting, but to like my nature of being a Star Wars fan and wanting to know the history about it. There's Ralph McQuarrie concept art cards in the original set, which is like the coolest of the cool thing. And these things are printed all to hell. Like there are
Yeah. Yeah.
so many of these out there, which is great, right? Because for me, it's not about like, oh, I've got $1,000 one of one. Like these are accessible to everybody. You can still go out there and get a box of these. I mean, sealed for probably like $100, I would guess, 80 to a hundred
Yeah, and I
dollars.
think
Which
that price will fall when the prices of other Star Wars cards fall a little bit too. I think it'll come back down because it seems to be a pretty endless supply of.
they're out there in mass number.
And if you want to have a little bit of fun, they did have one parallel in some of those sets, which is a first day of production parallel. You can
Yeah,
find a little gold stamp on some, so that's always fun. They're not individually numbered or worth that much more, but
yeah,
it's fun for
and
collecting.
so they are very fun for collecting, and it's the longest, probably longest running series of to the second version of the Chrome Galaxy series. But I think there was Galaxy series 1 through 3 was in the '90s, and then I think 4 comes back a few years after that down the road.
5, 6, and 7. Yeah.
5, 6, 7, and then there's one that's unnumbered, but I think is like Galaxy 2018 is like
Oh, okay.
this eighth series, right? So I mean, that's a fun set to collect. I have pieces of several different Galaxy ones, almost full complete sets of a couple, or complete sets of a couple of them. But those are ones that I really like to go to just to like flip through binder pages because there's a lot of the art is really cool
A lot
and
of
the
expanded
information.
universe, yeah, stuff
Yes.
popping in. Very cool.
Yeah. I mean, you brought up to the finest set, right? Which is right around the same time. And this finest is a brand of tops that is sort of a subset where they kind of started figuring out like, oh, we can put a cooler finish than just like the cardboard papery finish. Finest really is what starts that like chrome era. So that there's baseball's finest. Star Wars finest is such a cool thing that exists in the '90s period too. Like we both went out and bought complete sets of that as soon as we opened some of those packs. We're
Yeah,
like, these
yeah,
are cool cards, these are sweet because they are so EU. There are some wild ass characters
yeah.
in those
Super weird.
in that finest set. A lot of fun to pull that set together. And those packs aren't too terrible if you can find yourself a pack or two.
They
Those
have
are
they
just
have
sets that are fun to
risen
open.
recently. There's been kind of a run on the gold backs
Yeah.
recently. But yeah, that's a great set. I feel like I forgot that I might be interrupting here, BC,
No, no,
but I
go
did
ahead.
want to mention when we talk about a set of cards, usually that set of cards has a a set of base cards, usually around 100 of them, maybe more, maybe less. And those are just kind of images that represent the set as a whole. And then there are also insert sets. So, for example, you have your base cards, they kind of all look the same. And then you might have a character card, insert set where it's like just characters standing on a background. So Mandalorian Season 2 cards were mostly screenshots of the show, and then you have one of the insert sets are the characters of the show, and then also what you might have is manufactured hits is something we haven't talked about. Manufactured hits are something where it's like, oh, we'll make a different type of card. We'll put one of those in every hobby box, or rather in every blaster box, whichever it is. A lot of times those are patch cards, which are kind of thick cardboard stock with a little patch floating around in there. Sometimes they're relics, which can be sourced fabric relics, which means, hey, this fabric is kind of like the fabric we used on the show. We'll put it in there. Or you can have actual relics. This claims to be screen used chunk of the Razor Crest.
That's a hot sauce card right there, my friend.
One of my
best
cards. Thank you. This one's numbered 6 of 50. Mando with a tiny little chunk of a Razor Crest in there.
That's a sick card.
That claims to be a genuine screen used piece, but also you might get a card like this that's just like, hey, this looks kind of like a wall or whatever. Typically it's the fabric relics where that's a fake, or a medallion or a necklace like charm. So those are interesting subsets of cards that some people are really interested in. I rainbowed a TIE Fighter medallion. A rainbow, we also haven't mentioned. A rainbow is when there are a bunch of different colors, parallels, and you get every single color there is, which means you better start with the 1 of 1. So the 1 of 1 for this was the red one, and I got it on eBay very cheaply, and then went in search of all the other color parallels of that card. So again, a lot of people just collect rainbows,
Another fantastic way to collect is if you find a card you like and say, I'm going to get one of each of them. And of course, the 1 of 1 being the rarest of the rare, and so much different than the 100 of 100 because the color is different.
Now, this is another thing. I like numbers, so I try to get my Lukes in 5 of whatever. So I'll get a 5 of 50 Luke or a 5 of 100 Luke. But what I also like are Alpha and Omega cards, because I'm a sucker for capitalism. An Alpha card meaning it is the first card printed of a parallel, and the Omega meaning it's the last card. So, for example, this surely I've got one here somewhere. Yeah, this is a 50 of 50. So it is numbered 50 of 50, the last card printed of this Mojo parallel of this X-Wing. So that is an Omega X-Wing.
Here, I got you an Alpha right here.
Ooh.
Show you an Alpha. This is a 1 of 10 stamped on the back there. Kanan controls the blast. So yeah, again, it's a false sense of value to me in a lot of ways, where the 1 of 10 is worth more than the 3 of 10. Be clear, listener and viewer, they are no different. It's just the number stamped on there is 1 of 10 or 10 of 10, which it kind of bafflingly it does mean more to people. Similar in the sports world,
how my brain works.
If it's the player's number, that card is more valuable. So if you're number 3 for the Atlanta Braves and you get the 3 of 10, that's as valuable, if not more valuable, than the 1 of 10. So just weird collector things that people will pay for. I don't know.
That's my brain likes consistency, and also like sometimes if I have a little bit of money to spend on an eBay single, I might wind up getting the 50 of 50 of a card instead of one of the 10s, because that's how much I want the number. I also, sometimes I'll get on a kick. I have the 6 of 10 of this card, so I went and I found 3 other 6 of 10 or 6 of whatevers. I got the 6 of 25 and the 6 of 50. I guess that's 2 others. But anyway, there's lots of fun things you can do with numbers.
There are a lot of fun things you can do with numbers. And there are a lot of numbers out there to be had. Especially now. The parallels are much more, I think, relevant today.
They're printing them like mad because they want to keep prices high, and it keeps people in their niches and paying too much for things.
Mhm.
We could be cynical about every aspect of card collecting right now. One of those aspects is card protection. You got to buy some plastic to put on your paper, BC.
You do have to buy plastic to put on your paper. You've shown us a couple of excellent examples of that. The range of the plastics grading are going to be totally encased, sealed forever. That's why you're paying for the grade.
That's called
You've
a
got hard,
slab, yeah.
you've got a hard plastic slab around your card. A sort of the step down from that is going to be the magnetic one touch, which is a kind of it's a thicker, harder case. Yeah,
Often
it's
kind
got
of
a
a hinge type mechanism with a magnet.
yep. Your card will sort of be inset into there, so it sort of protects the corners. Have these little corner boxes on them, so those are protected.
My
Um,
favorite type of one touch is a one touch that allows you to put a card that is in a penny sleeve inside of the one touch. So it has a little bigger border
yep.
to account for the edge of a penny sleeve. What is a penny sleeve, you ask?
Oh,
A penny sleeve
I
is the basic in card protection. Flimsy plastic. The
think of
best.
it as your underpants. You know,
That's right.
it's it's the base layer.
It'll hold your dookie if it has to.
You can slide in basically any old card in there, and the bare minimum.
There are different gauges of cards, so some cards are thicker than others, and some cards are too thick for these sleeves. But for your most of your paper product, this is going to work just fine. The best tip I ever learned, because putting your card in here, you can damage your corners. Easiest
You
thing
sure
to
can.
damage on a card is a corner. Give this thing a little twist here, so you got a little hole, a little.
Get, get
You
you a
you
little
pinch
twist.
it so there's a little gap here in the corner, and then you flick that little gap until you got a tiny split at the top of your penny sleeve, and then you can put any card in there without issue.
Pinch and flick. What are we talking about here?
Pinch and flick sounds like some baseball players from the 30s.
Old pinch and flick out there in the middle infield. They're at it again.
And then finally, BC can't leave without saying the one other essential in card protection, the top loader.
Classic.
Which top
Yep.
loader is a piece of thicker plastic that you slide your flimsier plastic coated card in, and boom. Thank you, BC. BC's got an example. One of those hard plastic holders. You don't want to put a card in there without a penny sleeve. That's what I
You will
did when I was
ruin
a
the
child.
surface of the card.
It'll
Yeah.
get scratched up. Don't do it. Penny sleeve first, put it in the top loader. And then remember, you still don't want those things in direct sunlight, baby. Some of these one-touch cases have UV protection. Some of the top loaders do. But don't put it in the sun. Don't do it. Won't last forever.
Avoid direct sunlight.
That's plastic for your paper, BC. What else have we got over here that we haven't covered yet? Sketches?
Well, I would.
Haven't
Yeah,
talked about
sketches.
sketches yet. That's a
Sketch
big part of
cards
collecting.
are. Yeah, well, I think we briefly mentioned it as part of the hits that you can get in your hobby boxes. Tops is well, not been as good recently, but they do have sketch artists who will do sketch cards. So they get sent out a blank card and are given kind of, I guess, a certain set of rules about what they can draw. But they will do small little bits of art on your card there for you. So it is a true one of one. It's an original piece of art drawn by an artist. They, I will say, have become less plentiful.
Yeah.
Recently, as Topps is, I guess, a couple things, printing more of their product, which is
Stretches
making
out
the
hits.
harder for the artist to get the hits in there. So if a sketch used to be, one every box or one every couple boxes, is now like one a case, and you're doing good on sketch cards, which I think is indicative of print runs being higher and just what artists are being asked to do for relatively little amount of money.
Especially when they might get paid less for something that is turned around. They might get paid nothing, basically, for something that is then sold on eBay for a lot of money.
Yeah.
Because these are some of the most desirable things in modern Star Wars cards. Some of the earlier sketches, like I have one here from the Clone Wars that I think is representative of how a lot of sketches used to be, where it was like one artist would crank out, like 30 of the same image, basically, just really. And I think some of the artists they hire still do that, but it's a huge variety of types of art done on these. Like this one actually has paint on it. This is a painting. This
That
one's
Akbar
pen
card
and ink.
is sick.
This Akbar is my favorite sketch I've ever pulled. Shout
Yep.
out to Space Hindu. Pulled that
Nice.
out of Galaxy Card. But that artist did a whole set of characters with a similar border. And yeah, some of the artists are in super high demand. Some do, photo real works of art that probably took hours and hours and hours to create.
Yeah.
So
Angel of Velas, I think, is probably the highest end sketch card artist out there.
yeah.
Does really fantastic stuff that is highly, highly collectible. Very cool. Check that out on the next resource that I want to mention, which we've mentioned briefly, which is eBay. Ooh, you want Star Wars cards? Baby, go to eBay.
If you want
Check it out.
value, quote unquote, don't buy the singles, baby. That's the way
Yeah.
to get your money's worth, because then you decide what you're getting instead of gambling. So you lose a little fun, but you get what you want.
Yep. Yes. That is you lose the gambling ripping element. You know I'm a fiend for. But if you wanted to go on and buy a set of Galaxy Series 1, you can probably buy that set for $20. That's the 140 full first Galaxy Series 1 set. You can get the whole thing for cheap. You don't get to the excitement of opening the packs, but it's already there for you. You get all the cards. You can throw them in your binder sleeves and enjoy them for a fraction of the cost of buying a hobby box. So that's one great way to use eBay. Singles too. Who's your favorite character? Are you an Ahsoka fan like me? Go to eBay and type in top Star Wars Ahsoka. There are going to be a lot of cards that that vary in value. Whether they're parallels, base cards, autographs. There's a lot of stuff out
But
there.
BC, how do I know I'm not paying too much?
Well, let me give you a couple tips, my friend. One, if you go to sold listings on eBay, you can find out how much the last card sold for. You can also go to 130point.com and do the exact same thing.
And 130
130
Point will tell you what a best offer was. So
they will.
It is how much
they will tell you how much it's sold for, because there will be some cards that will say $10 or best offer, and it will say offer accepted on eBay, but it won't tell you how much. If you
It'll
go
look
to
like they paid the asking price.
the asking price. If you go to 130 point, it will tell you what the offer was accepted for. So it's a good way, if you're not familiar with the term, to comp a card, to get the comp on that card, to find out what comparable sales prices are going for. You can do that on 130point.com. It's got a search eBay sales function. Type in top Star Wars Ahsoka. If it's a specific card, Galaxy, Chrome, you will find out how much that card is going for, how much it recently sold for.
Now,
What do you have there, Adam?
You could also check the price guide sponsored by Ultra Pro here in Non-Sport Update, the non-sport
Amazing.
trading card magazine that I have been subscribed to for a while. They want me to continue my subscription. I'm not sure that I will, but I will say this magazine does seem to have improved drastically over the last couple of issues. I don't know. The articles going on in here about all non-sports cards. So there's usually something about Star Wars in here, because I'd say Star Wars is one of the the top non-sport properties. But they have price guides in here, and it's hard because they obviously can't list every parallel, and the majority of like value fluctuation is due to parallel sales. So, and also it comes out a little late, like this is a paper thing that comes in the mail. So
it's an antiquated thing from my childhood that I absolutely loved about card collecting, was going to my Hastings and checking out the price guides that were there.
It's very satisfying. I mean,
it is.
Shout out to Non-Sport magazine. If you just want to disappoint your father, order Non-Sport magazine. There's not a funnier name in magazines.
Non-Sport.
Just to be clear, Dad.
I am not looking at sports cards. This is not sports. This is not sports. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, is this tied to Beckett, this magazine?
I mean, Beckett is one of the main card value magazines.
Yeah,
that's probably the most popular one from my youth.
This is from Beckett Media.
Yeah.
So yeah, this This is Beckett. They've been price charting for forever, so you can trust it, I suppose.
Another thing I do want to mention, I'm just checking our list. I know listen here, listener. We've thrown a lot at you.
Yeah, this is confusing.
There's a lot out there. But I'm gonna throw one more confusing thing at you. Then I'm gonna put a big old beautiful bow on this thing. You can go straight to Topps. So Topps is the exclusive licensor of Top Star Wars trading cards, which we probably should have mentioned a long time ago. There are other brands. There's Panini. There's Upper Deck. Blah 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 blah. Topps is where it is at. If you're a Star Wars fan, you can go to Topps.com and buy Star Wars cards right now.
Good luck navigating their website, because literally you can type Star Wars in the search bar and it will not give you an accurate list of products. You can go to the Star Wars site, a portion of their website, and it'll say, there ain't nothing here. But if you go to the main page and scroll down, there's new product there. Sorry, I have an ongoing frustration with this.
I know. Oh, I can feel the heat coming from your side there. Are you all right?
Yes, my master.
But you can go there. They're releasing sets. I mean, the living set that you showed earlier, it's got blue Starfield borders. They're releasing 2 of those cards every week until we're dead.
Yeah,
or until they run out of characters to draw.
And those are print on demand, so they put them up for a week and say, order some of these living set cards.
Yep.
And they go away.
And then they do episodes of TV shows. This is the trailer set for Andor. I was a big Andor boy, so I bought every set of Andor. Usually it's 5 cards per episode, so they're well into
Book of Boba. I bought 1 episode of Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, so then we're well into the Mandalorian season 3.
Those tend to have parallels too at this point. They also just print like random singles, or like, hey, here's a weird thing that looks like a baseball card, but it's got Mace Windu on it. Or recently they did the 206 tobacco cards, and that was very fun.
Love those. They tend to be fairly pricey. Sometimes those like 3 card sets are $15, and
you
it's
can
like
generally get them cheaper on eBay, right?
Here's the insider tip: just buy them on eBay, because there are people who are buying them in bulk and paying less for them, and then passing that price along to you on electronicbay.com.
You're probably less likely to get a card that will grade a 10, because,
and I can guarantee you will not get a parallel. Do it that way. They're taking those out. But if you just want the base cards for a lower price, eBay them. You can find them on eBay. There was a baseball card recently that I wanted. It was $10 on the Topps website. I got it for $5 on eBay. I was very excited about a 50% savings on that particular card. But they are always printing stuff. Topps is our overlord of Star Wars trading cards. I mean, they've got a lot of stuff that's available for you. But, just be aware of the cost. I think my attempt to land the albatross here is that there's a lot of stuff that's out there if you like Star Wars. There are so many different collectible markets. We found Star Wars trading cards and loved it, right? There's action figures, there's posters, there's props. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. This is relatively inexpensive and is a lot of fun. And if it's, if you can walk away with any piece of advice from me, it's like, find what you like about Star Wars, and just look for the trading cards that you might enjoy. That's kind of how I started. After kind of the blind approach was like, oh, I just found this box, let's open it. It's like, oh well, I wonder if they make Ahsoka cards. What's the first Ahsoka card that was made? What are all the various different types of character cards that I can find from Rebels? What are the different sets? There's a lot of what I like to do, which is just research, which is like look into all of these things. So hopefully some of this stuff helped you, because I know you and I had to personally do a lot of this, like learning the hard way, or like sharing the information with each other, because there is no there's not always like a hot quick guide on how to do these things. Like
until
now, with the clearest guide of all time from the Cargo Bay. Yeah. Hot and quick. Now that we're an hour into the recording. But it's like, things like penny sleeves and top loaders, like you don't have to do that if it's just to have them and enjoy them. Like if it's not about like, I need these to retain value so I can sell them down the road, then like
probably won't.
Yeah, like there are certainly cards that you and I have that we say, I'm gonna set this aside because there is value to this in case
That's
we need
true.
to sell it, or like when
Yep.
we die, it can be like, hey, you can sell that and make some money to burn my corpse.
If anybody ever sells my 6 of 10 Jawa, I'll haunt your grave.
I will haunt you until you're dead. But yeah, it's like there, but it's knowing what has value. It's relatively easy to look up if you know to go to 130 point. You can say, oh, this is a $20 card. That's not nothing. I think there are high end collectors be like $20, whatever. But it's like, $20 is a card you probably want to protect as opposed to your common cards. But there's a lot to learn. I'd say do a lot of the legwork yourself. It's If you enjoy being a hobbyist, this is a fun hobby. I think generally to get into if you can avoid some people's opinions and just enjoy it for yourself.
Yeah.
Like find what you like and collect what you like, and just be assertive in your own taste of what you're going to collect.
Yeah, and that's something I'll say too. We've learned a lot from Facebook groups. There
Mm-hmm.
are good groups on Facebook. Shout out to the people who moderate those groups. But they are also there's a lot of toxicity, like you said, in people's opinions. So don't let anyone else cramp your
On
style.
social
Yeah,
media.
yeah. If you're having a good time, and yeah, I think there's a lot of fun to be had, like you said, BC. I certainly I do enjoy my Star Wars card collection. My advice is just focus up before you spend big. And spending big to me is like $100. Just make sure you're not buying a bunch of trash you're not going to want in 2 years or whatever, just to fill your shelves, unless that's what you want to do. But generally, my collection has been something I've pared down and honed in. And typically, if I'm going to buy a single, it's something that I've thought about for a while, and I'm like, I really want that card.
Like my show and tell here, these are like the pride of my collection. Are not the most valuable things that I own, but it combines a lot of the elements of what we talked about, which is both set collecting and parallels, which are my green parallels from 2021 Chrome Legacy,
They're
right? Which is a,
beautiful.
a very big set. But I went specifically after the Rebels portion of the set. So like I went in and I got all of the of 50s in green. Some of them are more
Sick.
expensive, which is just the nature of it. But this collection was one of my favorite things to do, which was finding all of them, pulling them together. It's 27 cards, so it took a little while, but like it was fun monitoring eBay, checking in to see like, oh, is the Ahsoka card where she's fighting Vader, which is probably the most expensive in this set. Like, is that out there? So whenever I
Those
found that for a
eBay
decent
emails
price,
coming in
yeah,
the morning are fun.
as soon as that showed up, I had to jump on it. But like it's one of my favorite things about it because it was a niche portion of collecting that I found. There's scarcity built into it. There's the love of the content that's on the cards that's built into it, and just like the fun of the chase and doing that. So I mean, there's all sorts of ways you can do it. Find out what you like and go from there. And
And go where the other people aren't going at the moment. Don't buy the hottest product necessarily, and you'll get a good deal. I like, for example, the Chrome Galaxy cards are very pricey. Nobody
yeah.
wanted this IG88 for whatever reason. I thought it was a really cool card, but it was one of the lowest price cards on the market. So I like having three of a card a lot, like in different parallels. So this is something that costs nothing, and it's one of the not nothing. It was I'd say this is probably around $50 all said and done. But this is one of the favorite things in my collection. It's just this 3-panel IG88 that other people didn't want.
Yeah, this is my Father, Son, and Holy Ghost that I've got here. The Trinity of the Jedi that I've got. Um, Again, this is just. I mean, there is value to these cards, but it's just something that I like displaying and looking at. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like that's the fun thing about these two is like they can just be display pieces. There's some like I've got boxes of like cards that are just sitting that I very rarely look at, but some of them are like, oh, I want to display these. Like this, they're got cards that are displayed back here. For those of you who are watching, for those of you listening, it's my back wall on my office apartment. And yeah, I mean the again, find what you like. Find what is pleasing to you aesthetically. Find, what value range you want to be in and stay in it. Because if you go outside of it, then you got to start being careful. Because as you were mentioning, I would say another thing to say is be careful about those values. Really do your research. There are
There's
some
definitely shill bidding happening out there.
there are some bad faith actors in the hobby driving up the prices of these cards under the false pretense that they are incredibly valuable. I say my favorite example from this recently was the
Kurzawa.
Sapphire.
Oh wow,
well,
Sapphire was even worse because
Sapphire was
nothing,
yeah. I mean, Sapphire, whenever those boxes came out, they were, if you got them through Topps Direct, which you had to be part of an exclusive club that you pay for access to, you could get those for a couple $100 a box. And as soon as they came out, they were flipping them for 700, and now they're down to, I mean, half of that probably, right? So, I mean, be careful
the single price
with the prices.
drastically
Way down,
fallen.
yeah, way down.
They were like any numbered parallel, people were trying to sell for hundreds of dollars for a while.
Yeah, just crazy.
Yeah.
So be careful, but if it's something you really want and it's in your budget, go with God. You know what I mean? Yeah, then go for it.
I have bought my share of. I am currently flat broke, so have not bought cards in a long time. But I did buy somehow a high value, quote unquote, cards last year, and a lot of those cards, I don't want to part with any of them. But at the financial situation I'm in now, I'm looking at some of them and I'm like, maybe I need that few $100 back. Maybe I sell a few of this. As long as you're not too crazy, that will remain an option. Unless you're buying boxes of Sapphire for $700 the moment they drop. But if you're careful, I would say at least there hasn't been a current explosion where I've lost my ass being like, oh no, that card is now worth nothing.
Oh no, I'm wasted, financially ruined.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, I mean, gambling, so be careful with that too. It's definitely addictive. Collecting is an addictive thing.
It totally is, as witnessed by me feverishly chasing the green set of those cards. Where I was like, oh, there's one online. I feel, it's like they were $5 to $15 on average for most of those cards, and it's just like, that's not something I'm going to lose my lunch over. There are people who are spending a lot more money on that who may be losing their lunch over things. But if you're just getting into it, know your budget, know what you like, have fun.
Yeah, enjoy the rip out there. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below.
Please!
We'll probably get around to answering those, and maybe we'll do some more videos like this, more micro-focused on things. But
I think that is a fantastic idea.
We have a lot of them here in the cargo bay, so make sure you like and subscribe. Anything else, BC?
I think that's all I've got. We appreciate y'all tuning in. Make sure to leave us a 5-star rating, a thumbs up, a like, a review, or whatever your current system of ingestion is telling you to do. Do it.
Until next time,
we would appreciate it. Go snoke yourselves.